Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh here today on Insight Timer Live. And this is another Open Wisdom Wednesday. And for those of you who haven't done this before, I'll put what it is in the chat and then just read it. And I have these are Irregular Wisdom Office Hours. I ask unplanned, general, and specific questions for your wisdom, and you ask me. In the meantime, we share openly, likely from what's currently happening, to get our wisdom. So a bunch of fancy words meaning, I'll share some things and you're welcome to share things, ask questions of you, and you ask of me. So now the title I also put on here today is perhaps fear, perhaps not. One way to look at that is, I thought maybe I might talk about fear today and maybe I wouldn't, but it seems relevant enough, I guess. So this was born out of a discussion I was having with my fiance about why aren't there more people awake? Why aren't people doing the awakening process to realize awakening? And it kind of boils down to fear. There's this cliche of everything can be boiled down, like emotionally, either to two emotions, love or fear. And so what am I talking about here? I feel the notion that people are fearing the awakening process. You have one camp that they're so overstrong, have taken on so many commitments that they would love to do more of the awakening process, more of this type of inner work and things. They just don't have the time, and they just want to have some stability before so they can go about their day. Things are so hard, they don't need it any harder. And then there's people on the other end that don't want to get out of their comfort zone at all. Everything is perfectly comfortable, and they don't want to rock the boat, don't want to push the envelope, and so the growth potentials aren't that great if we all stay in our comfort zone all the time. So we've got this polarity, and I think maybe people are on a spectrum of this, maybe leaning more one way than the other. So I can ask you guys, what do you feel? Are you too much in your comfort zone, or do you need more of a comfort zone? And how do you know? And this motivating factor of fear driving our intentions, and I would say more times than not, whether we admit it or not, fear is making our choices. I would say at more deeper levels, most people, their fear of death drives their choices. Okay, so I won't go too much into that. And what's even beyond that, I think, is even more scary for even more people is the fear of losing their mind. Okay, people would rather have, be paraplegic, die 1,000 times over, than having the possibility of having their mind lost. The thing is, though, there really isn't any control in life. The good news is, though, that love is here. Love is the answer. Love is the only answer, pretty much, for the most part. And there's different flavors of it that work more practically than others. Now, I did want to drop a question in here and ask about fear in one's life. So, what have you learned from your most frightening and your most safe times in your life? So, if you think back on when you were most frightened in your life, what did you learn from that? When you think back at the times when you were the most safe in your life, what did you learn from that? I mean, if I had to answer these questions, the most fearful times of my life, I can be grateful in retrospect because now I have a reference point to compare it to. There were times I was actually quite significantly paranoid. And to me, it's like fear on steroids when the paranoia kicks in. And now, because I have that reference point, I'm almost absolutely fearless. sometimes to my detriment almost, And then when can fear be of help? What I feel fear can be of help is this governing agent, especially like this guardian of the world, where this fear of wrongdoing, right? If I did something that could cause me harm or another harm, well, then it's a healthy fear not to want to do that action again. And it's not to be caught in shame, blame, and guilt. It's just to clearly know and see from experience, okay, I made that choice. I know what that leads to, and it causes harm and damage to myself and others. So it's healthy to have a fear of that so it doesn't happen again without being lost and stuck in blame, shame, and guilt. So that's where I think it would be to have a healthy type of fear. So going back to the question now about what about the most safe times in your life? What have you learned from the most safe times in your life? And I would say for me, it's a recharging, this deep soul nourishment, deep heart nourishment of healing, of connection, of gratitude, and all the positive qualities in life, pretty much. So we need these moments of safety, just like we need to confront fear. And discernment, I think, is where we know the difference and know when we're getting into too far into one or the other and when we need to rebalance, perhaps. Now, I know during the lockdowns and to avoid any censorship or algorithms here, I know there was fear on both sides, and I'll just call it getting painted blue. And there's lots of controversy on both sides. You had one side that said, oh, you have to get painted blue or you're going to die, basically. And then you had the other side saying, if you get painted blue, you're going to die. It's going to kill you. And so the most important thing for me that came out of this was the fear on both sides and how detrimental it seemingly was to the immune system. I know there was maybe a month there when I was like in a heightened state of fear, whether it was from me or I was empathing those around me. And I noticed a decrease in my health just from this heightened state of fear. And I feel that it was maybe artificially being ramped up. I know it's easy to say in retrospect now, but so whatever side of the camp you fall on, um, you know, what how does that fear affect us? How does it affect our stress levels? And then how do our stress levels affect our health? So Andrea says, too many frightening moments to count. Some made me leave my body. Some make you numb or made you numb. And that's right. So what do we do about fear? You know, how do we address fear? I think that's the most important thing to get to here. And what I've learned or what I've been taught actually, and I've put it into practice, is unless I'm running for my life or fighting for my life, then it's okay to feel fear, to turn towards it and feel it in the body. I don't have to like it, you know, I don't have to want it to be there, and I don't have to want it to get rid of it either. But what does it really feel like in the body to have fear? Going back in the times we've been very fearful, sometimes it was helpful, and sometimes it's a trick of the mind, perhaps. We've survived everything up to this point, right? And what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is we could die. And we all have to die at some point sooner or later. Now, that doesn't mean to make brash, stupid decisions. But what's the best way people have found to deal with this? Andrea also says media and government infused all that fear. I had to stop watching the news, paralyzing. And Andrea, I had stopped watching the news pretty much years before that, even. And I'm so glad that, um, that was helpful for you too. I know it's helpful for me as well. It doesn't mean I won't still be misinformed. I found that I hear about the things I need to hear about one way or the other, and can almost read headlines and know what the gist of the story is without going into tons and tons of detail. So certain media outlets can, basically sell products, make money, more easily control people when they're in fear. Fear is a decent control mechanism for those in power. Once people are in fear, they're more easy to tell what to do to control, ask for solutions instead of looking proactively, at least actively looking for themselves as well as receiving help from others. So, Andrea says, I'd rather help people around me that struggle with anxiety and some with, and I'm going to not say that word, but yeah, it's a really serious thing. And I don't know if I think there's things on Insight Timer to not talk about it, which I feel is unfortunate. At the same time, that word in itself, not to censor anyone, and of course it needs to be addressed, but can actually invoke and plant seeds in some people, unfortunately. I feel. Now, I could be wrong about that. I know that there's a ban in newspaper reporting on that due to copycat instances, you know. And what this brings to mind, though, is mindfulness of death. So, you know, and it's not to be morose or, a downer, to be dark or anything like this. When we reflect on the inevitability of our own mortality, then what it tends to do, and if it doesn't, we can set the intent beforehand. And I have a guided meditation insight timer about death contemplation. Is it allows gratitude for being alive, to not take any moment for granted, and to know that most of us don't know the time, place, or the method of how this physical body will shut off. And when we see that this body has the same constituents of the earth and it will return to that, then we're not denying the fact that that's inevitable until we go beyond death, right? And it can actually bring a sense of aliveness and preparedness and really wake us up quite immediately, especially get us into our body when we realize that, yes, this sack of skin, bones, and meat, unless we go beyond our current condition, it is certain to go to the wayside, right? And what's our relationship with that, And how afraid are we of that? And how prepared are we for that? There's really no guarantee that I can get through this next breath completely. I mean, it's likely I will, but there's really not much of a guarantee because I don't know, lightning or a heart attack or who knows what. But again, realizing how precious every moment in life is. Yeah, Andrea says what I was talking about earlier, that you know, it's big in New Zealand and not talked about. Yeah, well, it's a touchy subject, and I feel training is needed for it. I don't think suppression is going to help a lot, and I wonder if people are already there in that mind space. I wonder if mindfulness of death would be helpful because they're already familiar with that. Um, but I'd be hesitant to do that. And of course, this is not medical advice, right? You need to talk to people with credentials, professionals, these type of things, and see what they recommend. Um, but that's just my own personal feeling around this. Yes, Andrea says it makes you live fuller and feel blessed. Absolutely. Every moment of a new breath, we're still here. We've survived it. Okay, well, thank you all for hearing me out, joining on this short contemplation about fear and, yes, also death contemplation as well. And when I realized that, it's a cliche to say the only thing to fear is fear itself, but a refined version of that is fear no feeling. I know sometimes, myself included, try to avoid certain feelings. And why is that? Because they're frightening a lot of times. But this courage to experience any feeling, no matter what, right? And to feel it in the body, feeling our feelings in the body. All right. May you all be blessed with the right kinds of fearlessness and the courage to face your fear and to help others do so as well when it's called for. And I'll just read Melissa's last comment here. She says, the location you're at is perfect. The wind gives answers and soothing. Beautiful. I have to agree. For the most part, even though it might be a little chilly and who knows if it's going to rain or not, but I will take it. Bye, y'all.